I am Dayna Wilson. I am a seniors real estate specialist and a certified senior housing professional. I have been in the real estate business for 15 years, got my license in '06, dipped my toe into residential in '09, and I've never looked back. But I soon decided I can't be everything to everyone. So I want to focus on the people and the clients that I love being with, which is why boomers, zoomers, and savvy seniors on the move. And from that grew the Savvy Seniors Living seminar series because I realized after consulting with people and meeting with people that there was a lot of misinformation out there. There was also maybe too much information. If you Google things, you'll get pages and pages and pages of stuff. And how do you know what's real, what's not real, who's good, who's not good? So, thus started the seminars. And so we will continue to present these as long as we keep getting these wonderful thank yous and messages saying, thank you for doing this, or I've learned so much, or, I didn't know this. So that's what keeps us going. Today's topic is We to Me, Aging Solo Successfully. I know some of you are still happily coupled and married. Some of you lost a loved one decades and decades ago. And I think there's probably a couple people here that have told me they were coming today that literally just lost their loved one within the last couple weeks. So we're all in different places and spaces, and this is a topic that's going to impact everyone here in the room, everyone. So I just want to thank these very special people that are here today because they are willing to share some of their learnings, their stories. There's no right or wrong answer. We're just here to talk. And at the end, we can open it up for question and answer. And then, as always, on your evaluation, if there's questions that you are dying to get an answer for, or you want further information about anything, make a check mark, say yes, call us, and you can write in there, I need information on whatever, and we'll make sure we get you connected to whoever you need to get connected to. So let's get this show on the road. All right. And thank you for the, I'm borrowing someone's glasses today. I can't see a thing. Okay. So when your spouse passes away, and I know I'm singing to the choir to a lot of you, your world changes, right? You're mourning, you're feeling grief and sorrow for your loss. You may feel numb or shocked, fearful, angry, all sorts of different feelings, maybe guilty because you're the one that's still around. Um, sometimes, like my mom, I remember she was angry at my dad because she would say, Ralph, how dare you left me? She was angry. So all these feelings are normal. There's no rules about how you should feel. There's no right or wrong way to mourn. Um, but there's different things that can happen physically, emotionally, different pain that we go through, feelings of loss. So at some point, you're going to want to put your life back together, and this is going to be hard work. Some people feel better feel better sooner than they expected, and some people really don't feel better for quite a long time. And it's sort of a common feeling, but we're going to find today that finding a support system is really key. Ways to learn to grieve, learn to accept your loss, not to ignore those feelings. Important to get help with your loss if you're feeling overwhelmed or really depressed about it. And family and compassionate friends can be a great support. So even just hearing from our friends today about what help they found was useful or beneficial from family and friends, because your tribe will want to reach out. Can you hear me? Well, that's true. Yeah. So you'll have to internalize your situation. Exactly. I agree. Bill was saying some of these things apply even if your spouse may be living elsewhere, still alive, but elsewhere, or, maybe has dementia, that kind of a thing. So I'm just going to ask each one of these lovely folks to introduce themselves and just real quickly how long they've been aging solo and perhaps where they live. And we'll go down the line and then we'll start with our questions. So, Bill, who are you?
My name is Bill Clinch. I live right here in Walnut Creek, and I lost my wife, Natalie, in April of 2021.
Super dupes. Okay, Suzanne. Oh, got to turn it on. Can we hear you? Let's hear.
Okay. I'm Suzanne Williams. I live in Walnut Creek, and as of yesterday, I have been going solo 22 years.
Oh, wow.
I can tell you, grieving doesn't stop just because you reach your 22-year mark.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Lorene?
My name is Lorene. I'm from Richmond, California, and I've been aging solo for 2.5 years. I'm coming up on my third year in November.
Hello. Okay. Am I here?
We still are short one.
Yeah, I think we're going to need another, or if you don't mind, we can share. I am Angela Wright. I am a certified financial planner in Walnut Creek. I have been solo, not due to death, but due to divorce for 4 years now. And I am here to help supplement with, some of the practical, technical things that you need to know to prepare yourself for this eventuality. Thank you.
And I'm going to just ask all our speakers to speak clearly, slowly, and make sure that everyone can hear you out there. So, Bill, we're going to start with you. And Bill has a story he wanted to share. So, let's hear what Bill's story sounds like.
Let me begin by saying it's important to create a safe physical environment, but also nurturing a fulfilling emotional and psychological space. Now, developing a sense of purpose is integral to this process. Research shows that having a purpose in life is actually linked to better physical and mental health and contribute to longevity. This reminds me actually of what I heard a neurologist say one time, that develop a sense of purpose and you will live longer. It's about finding direction and setting goals that resonate with your values and aspirations. Whether it's through community involvement or personal hobbies, engaging in actions that promote a sense of accomplishment and joy is crucial. Employ new interests, such as volunteering, writing, or maybe even painting. I did not realize how important this sense of purpose was until someone pointed out to me that I lost a sense of purpose after my wife passed away. She said, "You were a caregiver for 20 plus years, and then that went away." I thought about that and realized that I did definitely need to develop a new sense of purpose. Well, it actually came to me without me having to seek it out. Suddenly, I had friends coming to me saying they had a neighbor or a friend, or just recently a daughter who was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Would you mind if I had them call you? Now, in that 20 plus years of caregiving, I became the moderator of a very large Parkinson's support group here in Walnut Creek. I also started attending Parkinson's Action Network forums in Washington, D.C. Later, Michael J. Fox Foundation merged with PAN, and I continued attending a total of 15 to 20 forums in D.C. Now, these forums brought in doctors and scientists from all over the world to inform us of the latest research concerning Parkinson's. This is how I was able to accumulate a great deal of knowledge concerning Parkinson's. I also had the pleasure, by the way, of meeting Michael J. and talking to him at more than one forum. To sum up, developing a purpose is so important. It takes the place of anxiety, depression, loneliness, all the bad things that can happen in our life. One quick note to finish up. Pam Berg just passed away at the ripe old age of 114. That's the third oldest in the United States and the ninth oldest in the world. Now, when Pam was asked the secret to living that long, she said, maintain a strong social network and a sense of purpose. Thank you.
Wow. Mic drop. Thank you, Bill. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing all that. Um, Lorene, my question for you is what advice would you offer someone who has recently experienced a loss of a spouse or a partner? And is there any way to prepare for this emotionally or spiritually?
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Well, based on my experience, I thought I was prepared because my husband was in hospice from September through November, and they were great with helping me out reading literature. But when that moment came, I was not prepared, totally not prepared, even though I had talked to my minister and other people in caregiving groups. Once your loved one is gone, it's like it was very, very hard for me. Um, I kept having hope, had prayer circles going, praying, and more faith than a mustard seed. But when that time comes, you're not in control. And so as time went on, I found myself thinking, well, what do I normally do? So I got back into habits. I would go out for a walk in my neighborhood. And if three people said good morning to me, I felt great. And doing meditations, there's like little prayer books, 365 Days of Grief, and you open it up and you read it. It has a passage or something else to read about it, and that kind of helped me. And I'm also kind of organized. So I had to say to myself, okay, let's make a note of what you're going to do on your list, a maybe list. I didn't have a to do list. It was maybe because there were days I couldn't even, I wash up, shower, get ready, go back to bed. And that, so that's when I would tell people, be gentle with yourself. I would tell myself, at least I showered, even though I went back to bed, but at least I did something. And so my advice is to just be very gentle with yourself and really take it one day at a time. I also kept a journal. I didn't write in it religiously, but there were days like I was angry at my husband, angry at a lot of people, and I wrote in there and wrote the date. Sometime I'll say, excuse me, life sucks. I just put that in there and let it go. And I look in my journal now and I didn't realize how far I've come. I really have. I can actually look back at some of the writings and some of the things I said and smile about it or say, wow, I didn't know I felt that bad. So it does get better.
Lorene, thank you. I'm just over here trying not to cry. So, oh, yeah, I was going to say if any of you ever want to jump in and add to an answer, please do. Susan.
I lost my husband very quickly, very unexpectedly, and he was very young. So there was no time to prepare. Having experienced that and having experienced my friends going through the loss of a spouse with a long-term illness, there is no way. It doesn't matter what you know is coming. You will never be prepared. You may think you are, but you aren't, because it's still a shock when that final moment comes, and it's still an ending to hopefully a wonderful life together. So just a heads up.
Well, and I think you said it beautifully, Lorene. Give yourself grace. Give yourself grace, right? All right. Well, Suzanne, as long as we've got you, people, I don't know who these people are, right? But people say it's a good idea to wait a year before you make any major decisions. I don't even know what that's all about. Who made that up? Um, Especially financial ones. And maybe later on, we'll let Angela jump into this too. But again, everybody's different. But why do you think that is, Suzanne?
I think it's because as a newly widowed or a grieving person, you are not mentally at all times on top of everything. And I think you get a lot of pressure from people. Well, why do you need this big house? Excuse me, I love my big house. We built it together, we lived in it together, and it's got great memories. Now, my kids don't live in town. They live about an hour away. And I said, well, you could always move to Davis, Mom. And I said, heck no, it's too hot in Davis. Um, and so I think you have to be careful, although some people make huge decisions in less than a year. But I think it's up to each individual person when you feel you have the wherewithal about you and feel comfortable with the decision you're making, you can go forward. But I would also encourage you to talk to your loved ones, to talk to your children, get input from others and other people who have been through it. So I'm still in the same house, and I intend to be there until they cart me out.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. And I don't even know, it's not just the house, but it's like any big decision. Um, but I do find that, and somebody just told me this yesterday. I was asking a question of my team leader at work, and she said, Dayna, you know the answer. Of course, I knew the answer, right? So I think down deep, we all have our own answers, but sometimes talking with someone else, you're verbalizing your thoughts and your feelings, and you come to your own answers just by talking about it.
And I feel as far as dating or remarrying, that once again is up to the
Personal.
individual.
Yeah.
I told God, if you want me to remarry again, you better sit him down here next to me and say, here he is, Suzanne. And guess what? He's not here
He's
yet.
not sitting here yet. Okay.
Although my kids have said, Mom, if you find somebody, we just want you to be happy.
Of course.
And so,
And it's your decision
Yeah.
ultimately anyway, but interesting. And then I just didn't know if Bill or Lorene wanted to add to the question, which was, making big decisions. We talked about rebounding, dating, remarrying, or moving quickly to be closer to family, maybe without thinking things through. Anything you guys would want to add to that? And you don't have to if you don't have anything.
I guess some of my neighbors on the cul-de-sac going, wow, that's a big house for just you. And I go, yeah, it is. But are you thinking about moving? And I'm like, no, not yet. And so that's one of the pressures you don't expect, usually neighbors just speak to you and keep going. And I felt like that was a personal question to someone we're not really that neighborly. But yeah, there's that pressure that, or my other relatives are showing me places in Huntsville, Alabama to move down there. There's a booming, just people trying to make decisions for you. And I go, that's nice, but I think I'm going to move when I feel like it. So giving that up.
Good answer. Good answer. Well, as long as I've got you, Lorene, would you say there's a right way to grieve? I will say most of us sort of want to just get it over with because it is painful. Um, or some people even want to medicate to numb the pain. I know when my mom, I'll just keep using her, but when my mom was grieving for my dad, she went through the grieving process and she was crying for 5 years. For 5 years, out of the blue, she would just start to cry. And it got better and better. Now, one of her best friends, it was too much for her, and her doctor immediately put her on some sort of antidepressant medication, and she never went through the grieving process. Does that make sense? So at the end of the day, she was in a worse state than my mom was because my mom had naturally worked through it and had those moments and came out the other end. Um, so, kind of something to think about there. Anything to add to that?
Yes, you're absolutely right. There is no right way to grieve, and grief will find you. I had a friend whose son passed away, and she went back to work and just started just busy, 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 busy. And right in front of her classroom one day, I don't know what happened, but a student said something and she started crying, freaked the kids out. I mean, they were like, what's going on? And so, and she couldn't move. She really couldn't move. And so the principal told her, take some time off. You came back, what, 3 days? Just like, no, there is no right way to grieve. And I learned through support groups that there are no so-called stages of grief. It's not linear. And I have a stepson who's calling me a lot, trying to figure out which stage are you in. And so, and I said, oh, I guess I'm feeling okay. He says, oh, you're in acceptance. I go, not really. I said, if you called a few minutes ago, I was in denial and anger. And I said, and plan on today, I'm probably going to go through all of them. But just trying to get him to know that there's no right or wrong way. I could be in a grocery store and see a bag of peanuts, my husband's favorite, and I have to go and sit in my car, leave the bag of groceries right there, the grocery cart full of groceries, go out, sniff a little bit, and come back in and shop. But that hasn't happened in a good while. And so, and then I have friends who have said, okay, it's 2 years now. It's time for you to get out there and date. I have a friend I want you to meet. So there are people who have this misconception that 2 years is enough. That's it. Move on. And so, and I have to tell them, okay, yeah, all right, and never get back to them. So,
So, we just learned that grief is not linear and you could go through, and there's no stages and there's no magic amount of time, right? Did you want to add something, Suzanne?
I'd like to add something. Feel free when you're grieving initially to ask people to give you time alone. My kids came and stayed with me for 3 weeks, which was wonderful. But I was so busy taking care of them in their grief process, I was unable to grieve how I needed to. I found I was showering and crying in the shower because I didn't want them to feel, oh, we can't help mom. And I'll just share something funny with you. My husband loved the Beatles, and he loved the song, When I'm 64, Will You Still Love Me? Guess what song came into my mind yesterday? And this was his anniversary. He did not make it to 64. And so I'm thinking, oh, Mark, what made you give me that today? But I also saw yellow butterflies, and that was one of my consolations after he died.
I hear a lot about butterflies and hummingbirds, right? And then when I hear a blue jay, I know it's my grandma Mimi. So, we all have our thing. But Phil,
Is a little bit different in the sense that with my wife having had a disease for so many years, after she passed, and I thought this was kind of interesting, my daughter said, you know what, Dad? I actually started grieving about a year and a half ago when mom really turned bad, and that kind of thing. And I thought about that for a minute and I said, you know what? I really feel pretty much the same way. That's when I really started grieving. So, with all of her suffering and everything, when she did pass away, um, I know this is said a lot when people pass away that they're in a better place, but believe me, she's in a better place. So, anyway, wanted to throw that in.
perfect. So, Lorene, I know we talked about this, and we wanted to ask how your social support system may have changed. Was there a shift in friendships over this time?
yes, I had learned through support group that a third of the people will be kind of neutral with your grief. Another third would be negative, and then there's that third would be empathetic with your grief loss. I kind of learned that with some of my friends. I have a portrait of my husband over the fireplace, the funeral portrait, that I often talk to him or I often say something angry to him. And one of my friends came over. She says, "How long are you going to keep that picture up? I don't think that's healthy to have that picture up." Maybe I go, "Oh, she's in group 2, so I know not to bring her over. I meet her when we go out to lunch or something." And then there's people who came to my husband's service, and I hadn't seen them in a while. In fact, I went to high school with a couple of them, and they turned out to be very empathetic. They're listening to me, um, not offering advice, which was good because sometimes you just want to talk or cry or say something, say who you're angry at. And, they were and right now we're back to being good friends. And then, yeah, so people who are trying to tell you when to move on, um, it's actually their discomfort. And then I have to look around and think about some of those friends. A couple of them have never lost, not even a parent. So, and I figured, well, their day will come and I will be there for them.
Hey, Bill, I'm going to pick on you. You don't know I'm going to ask you this, but and it uh, may not be you, but typically, I'm going to say typically, we females tend to be the social arranger of things, right? We keep the social calendar and then we kind of tell our husband, oh, by the way, we're having dinner with the Smiths on Saturday, 6 o'clock, be ready. Um, do you see, maybe not you, but do you see maybe sometimes the surviving spouse, maybe especially men, do they withdraw or isolate maybe more than a woman? Have you seen that in your groups or friend groups?
Women
Well,
isolating themselves,
no, men,
or
more
men,
men.
men,
Because we women seem to be able to
yeah,
talk more.
men isolating themselves. It really depends, of course, obviously, on the
Person,
individual.
yeah.
I would say, for the most part, friends of mine that have lost spouses and that type of thing have done that. Um, in my particular case, I tried to get involved in many, many things. As a matter of fact, you even got down here in one of the questions here. Meetup has been such a great help to me. It really has. For those of you who are not familiar with it, it's you actually join the main group called Meetup, and you can do that by going to meetup.com. And within the group, there are smaller groups. Like, for example, I'm a member of the museum group. So a group of us go around to the museums all around the Bay Area periodically together, and then we have lunch after and that kind of thing. There's a movie group that I belong to, and there are several other groups. There's a knitting group, which was I almost, but no, no. It was tempting, but
I don't want to see your first project.
anyway. So to wind that part of it up, a meetup is a great way to meet people. They also have potlucks quite often, where you bring a dish and go to the potluck. And I have met tons of really really nice people.
Suzanne, what did you personally find to be most helpful in your journey, even though everyone's unique? Is there a story you want to share?
Oh, yes, of course. At the time my husband died unexpectedly, I was working. And when you're working, you usually get 3 days off for
Aw.
funeral or grief, which is nothing. But fortunately, I had very understanding bosses. They said, take whatever time you need. When you come back to work, if you feel you need to leave at any time, any day, please do so. So I did take advantage of that, but it was very interesting to see in my grieving process. I did share a lot with my people I worked with because they were very close to me, a very close knit department. At the end of about 6 months, a number of them came to me and said, Suzanne, thank you so much for teaching us how to grieve professionally and with understanding for those around you. I would like to share one thing. Everybody comes to you and says, I'm so sorry. How did they die? When did they die? All that sort of stuff. I would have loved somebody just to have asked me, what was Mark like? And so that has now been my process when I meet with people who have lost a loved one. Could you tell me a little bit about them? People get tired of telling the story of what happened, when it happened, how it happened, and how you felt. They're trying to move on, they're trying to continue with their life. So if you just ask them, tell me a little bit about your spouse, your loved one, people love to share that part because everybody is special, especially when they're a spouse. I hope not.
Oh, that's really good. I'm learning a lot. This is awesome. Um, okay, Bill, did your adult children help out? And if so, how?
To have my son live right here in Walnut Creek with his family, and he immediately had me over for dinners and watching sports and so on and so forth, which we both like. My daughter lives in Los Gatos, and I would go down there like on a Saturday morning and attend my grandchildren's sporting events and so on and so forth, and stay down there and then come back Sunday night. One thing that I really liked, and it really helped us all as a family, is my daughter planned a week trip to Mexico. And so we all got away and got out of the area here. And it really, really, really helped us move on. It really did. It did a lot for us. It was a great, great getaway, so to speak.
Nice. Suzanne, what about your adult kids? You already said that they stayed maybe a little too long in the beginning, but what did you find helpful?
They did, and they were very helpful, but I have to share some other things. Life goes on, no matter if you're grieving or not. The year my husband died was a very up and down year for me. My first grandson was born. He was 2 months old when my husband died. My son was getting married that year, 3 months after my husband's death. And my son said, Mom, do you want me to put off the wedding? And I said, no, Clark, you and Jessica have planned this. It's going to take you 2 years to find another venue. Go forward. Well, that was all great and everything went fine, except at the wedding, the father always welcomes the bride. And I decided I could welcome the bride. And this is just an example. Don't take too much on. Don't think you can do it. I got up there and I started my little speech and completely lost it. Oh, yeah, it was unbelievable because I was trying to take the place of my husband, which I couldn't do. And I now know you need to limit yourself. I was very fortunate. My son and his wife, all the bridal party, all came up and surrounded me and said, don't worry, Mom, we know Jessica's welcome. So just be careful what you think you're capable of because you aren't always capable of it.
Good advice. Lorene, what about your kids? Did they help out?
Yes, and I'm a blended family, so I have adult kids. Um, they did help out, especially with going to the airport and bringing relatives in. And luckily they didn't stay with me. They had their own places. And so I was able to grieve on my own. And with my stepchildren, we still check in, and the one that lives in Iowa, she's coming out for Christmas, and her dad's birthday or my husband's birthday is December 24th. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, and Suzanne already shared kind of a couple things that maybe weren't helpful. Was there anything, well, so other than adult children, or Lorene actually did, when people would say, how can I help? I love the, tell me about Mark kind of thing. What did you find helpful if people said, how can I help? What was helpful for friends to do?
I just think people need to listen.
Mm.
They need to be there for you. If you want to cry, they need to lend their shoulder to you. If you want to tell a silly story, they need to listen to that and understand that's all part of the grieving process. You could be bawling your eyes out 1 minute and laughing at some silly joke the next. It's a roller coaster. You never know where you're going to go. And like yesterday when I was driving up to Davis, I'm in the car driving. It's 22 years since Mark died. And all of a sudden I start crying. So grief never leaves you. You learn to live with it. And most times we can take a step forward, but sometimes you take 3 steps backwards. And it's part of life.
Now I'm going to ask all of you this. Now we're getting more into the nuts and bolts of things, but who would like to take this first about, did you talk about funeral or memorial arrangements in advance? Did you discuss pre-planning, prepaying, or did that all just kind of come as a shock and you had to deal with it after the fact? Who would like to take that first?
Husband died suddenly. We did have a will and trust. We had everything in place. I knew he wanted to be cremated, but we had not discussed, where do you want your ashes?
Mm.
These ashes are still on a shelf above my bed. Since that time, because I didn't want my kids to go through the same process, I have prepaid funeral arrangements for me. I have a spot for Mark, just haven't got him there. And I said something to my daughter recently, and she says, Mom, I'm sure he's happy being above your bed and watching you. And I think, what if there's an earthquake and those ashes go everywhere?
Oh boy.
So I think it's important to talk about it because you really don't know. And a lot of people don't like the idea of having cremation. My personal thing is it's good for the environment. So, and most faiths now support cremation where they used to.
Yeah.
So that's not an issue. And I have prepaid everything.
Nice.
And my son said, Mom, why did you do that? That's a waste of money. I said, if I live to be 100, it could cost you $10,000 to bury me.
Oh, or more.
Yeah,
Probably
Do
way
you
more.
want that?
Yeah. No, that's a lovely gift, actually.
Yeah.
I think that's a lovely gift. Bill?
Exactly what Suzanne said regarding you really do need to sit down and talk about it before. And when I say before, my wife and I sat down and talked about it long before she became ill, actually. And we decided on cremation, like Suzanne was talking about. And prepaid it as well. I kind of felt a little bit Suzanne felt regarding cost and all this. Might as well do it now, and the kids won't have to deal with it, and so on and so forth. So that's the way we did it.
Lorene?
Yes, Paul and I was our second marriage. So right after we got married, we went to Chapel of the Chime in Hayward and prepaid for everything, the arrangements, what it's going to look like. He even picked out his coffin. I didn't do that, not me. And so
That's a planner right there.
he's a planner. And so I felt, well, when they come, I'll pick it out. But It was a surprise when I went to Chapel of the Chime and all the paperwork was there. And the guy said, I forgot $300 or something. I'm like, wait, I thought it's all paid for. He said, yes, when your husband and you sat down, this coffin was what, I don't know, $5,000 or something. Now it's 7 or 12. And Paul did predict how much taxes would be when he passed. But apparently he didn't predict enough of amount. And so there I was thinking, oh, I owe 300, and I didn't have my checkbook. I think they took a credit card, but that was a shock. After I got home and read the fine lines, and I go, oh, I see. We did prepay for everything, but if the inflation goes up on an item, there's a difference between the taxes that was 20 years ago and the taxes of today. So keep
Isn't
that
that
in mind.
crazy? So, yeah, so be prepared that if you prepay today and you don't pass away for 100 years, that they're going to charge you the taxes 100 years from now. So that is a learning moment right there for sure. Um, okay, and then Lorene, you and I talked about how hospice can help before or even after a loved one has passed.
Yes, my husband entered hospice in September. It wasn't the same hospice as my dad, who had passed away, 20 years earlier. It was more like, um, I guess they came with these little glossy folders and what they have for you. And so I picked one out. And and I also had my husband in a board and care, and that was another story in itself. But after I guess about maybe 7 days into this hospice, I decided to call Kaiser, and I wanted Paul and Kaiser Hospice, and both of them were really good. But the just knowing that since Paul was a Kaiser member, I kind of felt like, oh, maybe I'll have more access to his doctors, which I did. But with hospice now, you get a social worker, a nurse, chaplain, which I made good use of, and health aides would come in and help with you. They gave me information to read, tell me, especially the nurse, what to expect, when Paul was going to be actively dying, just other things to know. And it was, they were great. I couldn't have made it through without them. And they followed through after Paul passed to make sure I was getting support. Unfortunately, Paul was we were doing the COVID-19 pandemic. So, but there's also volunteer health aides with hospice. And before, not without COVID-19 being around, there were people who would come over to your house to see what you needed or just to listen. And I hope that part is coming, because when Paul was in, we just talked on the phone or did FaceTime, and it wasn't the same. But I hospice was a good experience for me, and I still attend hospice support groups, grief support groups.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, and then, Bill, you've already shared some of this effective ways to stay engaged. You said that really beautifully. Um, if you'd like.
Definitely to stay engaged. Meetup is, to me, right at the top of the list as far as meeting other people and socializing and doing things that you like to do. Um, I also wanted to mention that I do get involved in volunteering in my church a lot, which is St. Mary's right over here in Walnut Creek. And another thing too is I got involved in some clinical trials actually that had to do with Parkinson's and that kind of thing. Excuse me. It wasn't so much that. Well, let me just make a long story brief. It was being on a panel actually as I was labeled as a Parkinson's advocate. with CIRM, which is California Institute for Regenerative Medicine. That particular group funds tons of diseases, including Parkinson's. And so I was on the panel for almost a year for this clinical trial, trying to contribute in whatever way I could. I felt a little inferior because I was the only one on the panel that didn't have an MD after his name, or her name or that kind of thing. But it really helped a lot to get me engaged.
Volunteering, getting involved. Suzanne?
I have 6 grandchildren. They all live in Davis. And 20 years ago, some of them were very tiny. So I was very involved with them. And I have a grandson who's on the autism spectrum. So I started doing a lot of things with the grandkids. I would go up every week and take Sean to different therapies so his mom could have a break. And then when she went back to work, after her youngest daughter was born, who graduates from high school tomorrow, I started going up and looking after her every week while her mother worked. I've been involved in my church. I've been involved in the community. I joined a support group for widows grieving and met a number of people there, and we've remained friends. My friends from work, 2 of them are here now, have been incredibly helpful to me. I think it's just keeping busy, but not keeping so busy you don't give yourself time to grieve. You still need to take time for your own physical needs, your emotional needs, and your spiritual needs. So I tried to be very involved with that. And I'm an avid gardener, so I'm heavily involved with the Walnut Creek Garden Club. So,
Finding those hobbies, those things that bring you joy.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to jump to Angela because I want to make sure you have time because we've been covering a lot of ground here and we want to make sure we leave time for your questions. And so, Angela, we've got a ton of questions for you. So,
Try to be brief.
but again, you're going to have Angela part 2 next Thursday at 1:30 at Keller Williams, 201 North Civic.
Don't
Suite
listen to me. I'm good
130.
at going to the wrong place.
Yeah, you're going to be at the wrong place. That's okay. Okay, Angela, what are the core estate planning documents a married couple or widower should have in place?
Yeah, so this is about preparing
Yeah.
yourself and your spouse
Yeah.
for this eventuality. Many of you probably know this, but I'll run you through these documents and what they are. And everything I say will also be in a link when Dayna follows up. So I talk kind of fast if you can't keep up with the notes. You'll get it. So your last will and testament, this is the document that dictates how your assets should be distributed upon your death. You name your executor. You designate guardians for minor children in this document. Then you need something called a durable power of attorney. This is the document that allows somebody to take over for you should you become incapacitated. And they take over your financial decision making with the durable power of attorney. The other power of attorney is the healthcare power of attorney. These do not have to be the same person. And I would encourage you to think through, who really will abide by my wishes on my healthcare power of attorney, right? And who do I know that would make really good financial decisions for me? That person you'll choose for your durable power of attorney. For example, my mother is still living. She helps me out a lot with my children. I would never list her for my healthcare power of attorney because my wishes are pull the plug if I'm a vegetable. My mother would never do that. She's my mother, right? So you think through who will actually execute as you intend. And then, of course, we talk about this a lot, your living will. And this is the document that will help your assets pass. It will protect you from taxes, can protect from creditors. You can make these documents very restrictive if you have heirs, children who maybe have some challenges around money. You can kind of lock it up for them. So this is where you really get to dictate, what's going on. In some places, you may need a HIPAA authorization form. Some people are really surprised that they cannot get information about their spouse when they call their spouse's doctor. You need to authorize each other to get that information. You even need to do that for your children in some cases, I learned this week. So those are the core documents that I think pretty much everybody should have in place, whether you're single or partnered.
And a lot of your wishes as far as cremation or burial, whatever, a lot of that is taken care of if you have a trust. When my husband and I put our trust together, our estate planning attorney was asking all those questions. So it's all in there. I mean, our ashes are going to be sprinkled up in Idaho. We know exactly where and how and all that good stuff. So if you don't have a trust, please get a trust put together.
In preparing for this session, Bill shared with me that he had an elder law attorney prepare his estate plan. And I think that's a brilliant idea. They did your trust. Yeah, that's brilliant. Because they know, elder law attorneys see what happens on the backside when things go sideways. And so they can help prepare for a lot of the eventualities that other estate planning attorneys don't get to see every day. They're also great. They can get the job done too.
Got it. Okay. Angela, is there an optimal way to title real estate and bank or investment accounts? And who is best to designate as beneficiaries of retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, and life insurance policies?
This is a big old it depends. And I also have to now say, this isn't financial advice. Consult your own advisor or attorney. But in general, every one of your assets should have either be in the name of your living trust or your living trust is the beneficiary, with one exception, and that is your retirement accounts. There are lots of ways that you could do this, but I don't think enough people are aware that if a trust inherits a retirement account, it has to abide by the 10-year distribution rule, which means that the trustees must distribute all of the assets of that IRA within 10 years. And they could do that however they want, all at once in the beginning, stretch it out, all at the end. But every year, you have to file a tax return for that trust inherited IRA. It's very annoying. So I would advise only use that if you really have to, because there's an issue with one of your beneficiaries. If my kid inherits my IRA, they're going to drain it all on day one, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to force them into this trust, and per the terms of the trust, I will force them to distribute it equally over the 10 years. So really, on retirement accounts, you would want to list your spouse directly or your children directly. When you inherit a retirement account as a spouse, you can roll it into your own retirement account, and then you're not subject to the required minimum distribution rules. Your children always will be subject to that 10-year rule, no matter what you do.
Interesting. Very good. Okay. What is a digital? Oh, go ahead.
Add something to that. I was a state person for my husband's father. And so when I went through all his paperwork, oh my God, I found he had a 401k that had no beneficiary on it. And so I took him down to the bank and I said, how did this happen? And they said, well, we don't know. And I said, it should have been signed in front of you in the bank. But what I'm thinking, his wife was ill. They probably let him take the paperwork home and he never took it back. So go through your paperwork and make sure there are beneficiaries on everything.
Very good point. Very good point.
This is part of my soapbox speech.
Exactly.
You're reviewing these things at least every 3 to 5 years. Or when you hear news that Congress changed in a state law, run to your attorney and just pay the $500 and review the document.
Good.
Every time you do that, you should be reviewing your beneficiaries. Or every time you meet your financial advisor, which is sometimes more often, like I often see people annually, we review all the beneficiaries just to be sure. And something I wanted to add, when you're doing your estate documents, you are putting things like your will, what you want to do with your ashes. But if you could take the time to write a few things down for the folks that are going to be handling this for you, take the decisions away from them. not only will that help them emotionally, like I don't want to have to pick out a casket for my mother. Just tell me what you want, mom. I'm already going through the loss of your death. But you could potentially protect your loved ones from fighting with each other. What if my sister and I disagree on the coffin? It's just like these little things inflame families when they're grieving because as we've discussed, you don't have your full capacity. And that's okay. None of us want to admit that, but it's true. If your brain was a battery, grief drains your battery. You just don't have it. Right.
So you're just saying be as detailed as possible.
Yeah. So I recently redid my estate plan after my divorce and I emailed it to my sister just yesterday. Honestly, this talk motivated me to get this done. You got to practice what you preach. So I sent her a long email and I said, listen, you're named as the trustee, but my brother-in-law is also a financial advisor. And I said, my intention really is that he's going to manage this money, just so we're clear. You're not doing it yourself. And I would also like you to take my children once a month overnight. That's not something I could put in my estate documents because my ex-husband gets them. But, these little things, please donate my body to science and then do that cool composting thing with me. There wasn't a place for that in my documents. So, I wrote it all down and I told her where she could find other important things in my home. You're going to want this. This is located here. My safe key is on this drawer, those sorts of things.
Good stuff. Okay, now my question was, what is a digital estate?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a big one and it's tripping people up. And I'm going to tell you a really awful story so you never forget to do this. So your digital estate, it comprises multiple things. It could be digital assets like cryptocurrency, NFTs. It could be a blog that you run that makes money. Like maybe you're a clothing influencer and you have all these Amazon affiliate links or something like that. It could be your social media accounts, your Facebook, your Instagram, etc. It's your iCloud and your Google Drive. It's your photos. It's your devices, your phone, your tablet, your computer, your smartwatch. All of these things, right, get locked out if somebody doesn't know the password. Your photos are probably not in albums anymore, like my mother's. A lot of them are in your iCloud or your Google Photos. How is your family going to get those things out of that account? They need to know how to log into your computer. Then they need to know how to get into every account on that computer. So writing these things down on paper where they'll be able to find it. Don't put a file on your computer if no one knows the password. Another thing that I always recommend is to use a password keeper. There are lots of secure ones out there. LastPass, LastPass, is something that sits on your browser. And you set one password and then it saves all of your passwords. And so if a beneficiary had that one password, they could get into everything. So we had a couple, younger people, they're not always sharing their phone passwords with each other. We got to have our privacy. And so I knew a couple, they were just under 40. He woke up one morning and said, honey, I'm not feeling so good. I think you ought to take me to the hospital. Something's wrong. She drops him off. She can't go in because it's COVID. He collapses right there in the doorway of the hospital. He had an embolism. And so there they are. They had him in a bed. She came back and she realized, oh my God, I can't get into his phone. He's got cryptocurrency accounts. He was, young investor. He had all the techie things. And she realized she couldn't access any of it. And those people don't have customer service. So she had to take her husband's hand in hers and place it on his phone to unlock it and change the password after he passed away. Don't let this be you. Give your spouse the information. My ex-husband and I didn't want to share all of his business passwords with me. It wasn't secure for his clients. So he wrote them down, he put them in an envelope, and he signed the seal of the envelope. So he would know if I snuck in there and, got his business information. But I had it where I needed it if I ever did need it.
Well, and on the flip side, a dear friend of mine, a neighbor of, quarter of a century, excuse me, just lost her husband last week. And when she and I would go hiking together, I'd say, Linda, Have you and Tony, do you know where the logins and passwords are? Because Tony was the financial dude. He took care of all the finances. I said, do you know where the passwords, the logins, you know where all that is kept? She goes, oh, no, 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 no. That's Tony's thing. I don't want to deal with that. I go, Linda, I said, I'm sure your kids are saying the same thing, but I'm gonna nag you. She goes, no, 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 I don't want to talk about it. Well, he passed away. And I don't know if they ever had that talk. So, I need to check in with her and see how I can help her. But yeah, it's just it adds more angst to the angst you're already going through. So um, okay. Now, Angela, you and I talked about this too. As couples prepare from an income perspective, what should we be thinking about?
Yeah, so your income is going to change. And the two places where you'll find that most frequent is Social Security and pension payments. You don't get to keep both Social Security payments. A lot of people think, oh, well, I'll just get a portion of my spouse's and mine and continue on my merry way. No, you're gonna take the higher of the two. So you may be losing $1,000, $3,000 a month in income. And then some pension payments are structured for life only. That's how you get the biggest payment when you retire. Some of them are joint and survivor. That means for the life of your spouse, you will get paid. You'll take a lower payment for that. And then sometimes you can even name children beneficiaries and it can keep going. And so, especially in those areas, it's really important to understand how this will shift and change when you or your spouse passes away and what your new budget would look like. What is my solo budget? He spends all these money on car parts. I'm not going to do that anymore. And then what is my solo income? And it's almost like you're walking yourselves through an individual financial plan for each of you. But while you're both still here, so you can help each other through it. Because I think in many cases, one person handles the finances in the marriage. It's pretty rare that both people are doing everything together. And so, yeah, it's really important that you're both on the same page about what's going to happen, what that looks like. And you can even, we might be talking about this later, I'm going to say it now. You can even help prepare them. You can mentor them. Or if you can't listen to your spouse, like once my friend and I traded spouses so we could learn how to drive a stick shift because we knew we'd end up screaming at our own husbands if we were in the car together. So we flip-flopped, right? So let your financial advisor or a friend, a trusted friend, probably your advisor, teach you if you can't learn from your spouse. Totally understandable if you can't.
So, okay, so we talked about this too. One spouse says, don't worry, honey, I bought a life insurance policy. You'll be fine. It'll be fine. And come to find out,
Absolutely not. Just no. In this case we're talking about, it wasn't fine. There wasn't enough money.
no, he had bought a life insurance policy for, I think it was as little as $10,000. That's not going to go too far. Where in her mind, she's thinking, oh, we have a life insurance policy. She was thinking, oh, we've got at least $500,000, right? At least $500,000. Huge difference. If they'd talked about it, maybe they could have been able to make a change before it was too late. So, lastly, Angela, action steps that we can take.
Yes.
Okay.
Have the conversation now.
Yeah.
I know it's a hard one to have. I just did it yesterday. It sucks. But, have it. When you get home, log into Facebook and make sure that you've selected your legacy successor on Facebook and your other social media accounts. If you have a hard time getting together with your spouse, maybe you could treat yourselves, like have the conversation and then go to your favorite restaurant. Or maybe you like Hawaii. Okay, this year when we go to Hawaii, we're going to designate one day to talk about this. You could make it fun when you have the conversation. Other action steps, prepare a manual of sorts for your finances, for your spouse. Where is everything? How are the accounts titled? Who is the attorney? Who is the CPA? Who is the CFP? How do I get a hold of it? You should know these people, go to the meetings, but listing logins and passwords. So here's what's at Schwab. Here are the account numbers. Here are the logins and passwords and balances as of the day I wrote this. This is the advisor that manages those accounts. Similarly, I would advise to do this on running your household. I'm the CFP, so I'm going to talk about money, but when I was suddenly alone and my toilet backed up, I didn't know how to shut the water off to the house. I didn't know which plumber he always called that snaked our drain over and over again. How will you run your household if your spouse isn't there? What are the things that you never touch? And let's create a little manual for ourselves. And if you go together, there's that manual for your kids ready to go so they can get everything.
And I know we had this conversation before. If you ever want to go on the website and go to past seminars, we've touched on some of these things before. We had a lengthy conversation about hospice. We've talked about We to Me in the past. It was named something different, but we did have an attorney there. And I had gotten the idea from somewhere that part of that manual went even further to because a woman had told me this, that she didn't even know where the key to the shed was, where their RV was locked up. Things like that. Or where's the key to the safety deposit box that they hid so beautifully so no one would find it? Or how does the alarm system work in our house? They'd never had that conversation. And then you've covered the trusts and the wills. And then the last thing is, and we talked about this too, is swap roles. So you mentioned this. So if one of you cooks, if you're in a couple situation, and one of you does all the cooking, okay, the next week, the next month, he's going to cook, and you're going to pay the bills. And now, who has some questions for these wonderful people, including our financial advisor? Any questions? Okay. Ellen, this is how I get my steps in for the day.
Yes, do you have any suggestions for a template that we can sort of start with all this information and make it easier to make the manuals?
I'm going to make one for you. I don't. So what I have is an article that I've written that Dayna will send out to everybody that has lists of things. These are all the asset areas you're going to want to consider, the debt areas, etc. But I can turn this into a checklist for you, and I will.
I just want to say there's also a book called Get It Together that the library has that walks you through everything that you should compile, even things like the names of your children and the names, like what you need on a death certificate, where you were born, the maiden name of your mother, things like that.
So my question is, do you have somebody to refer senior citizens for will and trust preparation or changes inexpensively?
I don't think anything is inexpensive anymore.
You might get what you pay for, right? And
we'll send out an email, or you can come talk to me separately, and I'll give you a couple names.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Any other questions on the topic today? Okay.
Okay, I don't have a question, but I have a comment. One of the things I had trouble with was automatic payments that went out of my husband's bank account, but I had no access to his bank account. And so then the Gmail went sideways, and I still have no idea if I've got everything.
This is a really common story, especially now that we live so much of our lives online. And this is the digital estate. What is the Gmail password? What are the banking logins? Right? If your name is on the account, you can go to the bank and kind of take over on the login and the auto pays and such. But if your name is not on that account as a joint account holder, you'll have a heck of a time getting access, especially if you can't use their email or their phone number to reset passwords, because everything has two-factor now.
Okay, he didn't have a password, he had a Face ID.
Yeah. So if you're using biometrics, like my friends, you'll want to set up a PIN. You can do that and the biometrics that people can use, and then make sure they have it. I'm so sorry.
Pros and cons to all this techie stuff. I don't know. Okay.
This is really a comment. I'm an Apple user, and I found out a month ago that it has in the settings, it has legacy, where you assign a person to be able to go into your account and get everything out. And I'm sure Google has it. An Android, I don't know. I'm not an Android person, but that's a bit of information.
Nice. That's
That's a really good idea if you're using Apple to log into your iCloud account when you get home and see if you've designated a legacy.
I just wanted to say be careful when you're assigning powers of attorney amongst your kids, because I thought I was going to be brilliant and advanced and way ahead of my time. And I put all of my kids, all three anyway, on my account as power of attorney. And then I fell on my head and I had 2 brain surgeries. And I was asked to go to Iowa to be near my granddaughter and her family. And so I did that. And she said, you can live near me, which happened to be an old folks home. And after I'd had my surgery. And however, the only problem was that when I was ready to go home, my daughter didn't want me to go home. She wanted me in that facility so that she wouldn't have to worry about me. My boys said, by all means, if mom wants to go home, let her go home if she's able to do that. And so they sort of argued it out, and over a long, stressful period of time, the boys convinced my daughter to ease off because she was threatening to sue me if I moved. And it was a big mess.
So what is the moral of the story?
What'd you learn from this? What's the advice to everybody?
Don't put all 3 as power of attorney. Yeah. Yeah. And Angela touched on another thing. It's very important, I think, and our attorney said this too. If there's multiple children, one can handle finances and one can handle healthcare, right? So you're dividing, jobs. Yeah, you'll just have to pick.
Dana, that's
It's not
one of the
popular.
things I think it's important for you to have often conversations with all 3 kids in your case, so they each know what you personally want and how they should handle it. You've got to get them on the same page.
Power of attorney does not work when you're selling your home either. I know we've had that conversation. I've shared that with you multiple times. But just because someone has power of attorney, that doesn't allow your realtor to sell your home for you. It's whoever is the trustee of the trust. Power of attorney ceases to work after death.
Correct. The power ceases when the person
So
passes.
power of attorney is fine and dandy while you're alive if someone needs to start writing your bills for you or what have you. But anyway, just things to think about. So again, I guess plan ahead, have conversations with your spouse, have conversations with your attorney, your financial advisor, your CPA, maybe your
kids,
your funeral home or whatever, so that you have the least amount of surprises when things change in your life, and you can just focus on you. And I hope today was helpful. And I want to thank these folks for sharing such very, intimate and personal information. I think it was helpful. It was very helpful for me to hear all of your words of wisdom. And thank you so much. Like, it's extra thank you.